Well, good evening, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to Planet Changes Live. My name's Charles Alder from EcoForce Global, and tonight we have the pleasure of welcoming Andre Leu to speak to us about regenerative agriculture, soil, and the climate, and how there are ways that we can actually repair our planet that aren't going to cost us a fortune. So let me introduce Andre. Andre is a globally respected pioneer of regenerative and organic agriculture with more than 50 years of hands-on farming and international leadership experience. A former president of IFOAM, Organics International, he's widely recognised for showing how healthy soils restore water cycles, rebuild ecosystems, and act as one of the planet's most powerful carbon sinks, translating complex science into practical, farmer-led solutions that strengthen food systems, landscapes, and rural communities worldwide. Andre, welcome.
Oh, thanks, Charles, and I appreciate the opportunity to talk with everyone. So what I'll do is I'll just start to share my presentation.
Wonderful.
Now, why has it disappeared? Hopefully this is the right one.
That's it.
Well, unfortunately, the stupid thing is...
Here it comes.
We went through it all and it's not... Just do it again. For some reason, it's misbehaving on me. Just going to start again.
We love modern technology, don't we?
Yeah, we went through it all and it worked perfectly. And then as soon as you go live, these things misbehave.
Now,
once again, try it again.
There we go. We've got you.
Okay, that's looking a bit better rather than the plans of my holiday house at Beach House at Cape Tribulation.
So Andre, tell us about your life experience and why you think, the subject of tonight is how regenerating land can reverse climate change faster than we think. Give some background on yourself. And,
okay. Firstly, I suppose the main thing is I am a farmer. Most of my adult life has been as a farmer, particularly in tropical fruits. I'm one of the people who pioneered the exotic tropical fruit industry up here in far north Queensland. But saying that, I've worked with farming all around the world, more than 100 countries, and I have a very good understanding of agricultural systems on every continent and every climate zone. So I specialise in it. I actually specialise in working with farmers, training with farmers, and helping farmers change their systems to more regenerative, agroecological and organic systems. Okay. So in that, I realised the importance of healthy soils and soil organic matter in drawing down carbon dioxide out of the atmosphere and putting it into the soil to build soil fertility. And because carbon dioxide is the main greenhouse gas, that's when I realised that more than 30 years ago that this was the main solution to climate change. I've been working on the area solidly since then. So what I do is just start with giving a context to what we're talking about. And, climate change up to now has been natural. And we can see this is the, you see that rises and falls in carbon dioxide. And this correlates very strongly with ice ages and with the areas between ice ages. So when you've got very low carbon dioxide, that's an ice age. And then when the world warms up, higher levels of carbon dioxide. Now that's happened naturally. Now, a lot of people say this is proof that carbon dioxide has been the cause of the ice ages. But the fact is, if you look at the temperatures and carbon dioxide, normally the carbon dioxide levels rise hundreds to thousands of years later than the temperature. It follows it. So when we look at that, the actual carbon dioxide is not the cause, it's the result of. But now we have something, we've got 800,000 years of ice core records looking at it. We've got something that's unprecedented in 800,000 years. And carbon dioxide is shooting up at a phenomenal level. Now, we know what the cause of that is. That's not natural. That's us.
Right.
So we are having an effect. And this is very important. And the other thing I just want to say too, that there's a lot of causes of this, and it's not just fossil fuels. I'll go into more detail. And the other thing I just want to say too, that someone has been involved in the UN process and going to the UN meetings and signatory, of some of these important documents. I was at Paris in 2015, more than 10 years ago. Everything's got worse. And I regard that the UN system has been a total failure, waste of billions of dollars. We are not fixing up the problems. We're getting more and more carbon dioxide. We also have a lot of skepticism now, because those of us who've been in this around, I started really in the 1980s with this 40 years ago. All the predictions, I should have a surf beach in front of my place now. That was right. I was looking forward to that. I like surfing, property improvement. Hasn't happened. For most areas, all these predictions have not turned out. And there's a lot of skepticism in it. But I just want to say, I went from someone believing the mainstream to then going, well, I've got to really look at it. And just to let people know as well, I call myself a farmer, but I actually do have a doctorate of science, and that is the actual highest science degree you can get. It's actually a notch above a PhD. So I am a scientist. And so I do look at things with a skeptical scientific point of view. And so then I started to question all the models, looked at them, and I said, well, rather than models, where is actual evidence-based science? And we do have it. And we actually have 50 years of satellite data, NASA, Japanese, European space agencies, and they can measure the exact amount of energy, infrared energy, that carbon dioxide traps.
Right.
That's science. That's not a model. And I did the maths on what they've done, and it's equivalent of 2,091 trillion watts of extra energy has been added to the Earth's atmosphere since 1750, the start of the Industrial Revolution. And this amounts, this is the best metaphor, is billions of atomic bombs worth of energy. And this extra amount of energy actually fuels our weather. And I'm using a violent metaphor because what we're doing now is this extra energy means that violent extreme weather events such as storms, droughts, fires, floods, crop failures become more intense and frequent. One thing I do want to say, and I hope someone does correct me and points out that there is evidence-based data, but I cannot find any evidence-based data. Everything is models. There's no actual evidence-based data how we take this trapped energy and we correlate that into increases in temperature or sea level rises. And that's why all these predictions have been so wrong. So Al, this year is colder. We've got more Antarctic ice this year. We've got more Arctic ice this year, than the year before. Weather is a very dynamic thing. And so all these models predicting, we're going to have a ice-free Arctic 20 years ago, all that sort of stuff, when we've got more ice in the Arctic, Antarctica is going to melt, and we're going to have 3 meters of sea level rises when we've got more ice in Antarctica this year than we've had since the 1980s.
Yep.
Shows that the models are just models, and they've been fear-mongering. And unfortunately, now you've got a lot of people who no longer believe in climate change, and you've got a lot of governments who no longer believe in it because of this, what I'll call very poor science.
Misinformation.
Pushed on us, pretending, this is the scientific consensus. If you've studied science, there's no such thing as a scientific consensus. That's dogma. That's religion. Science is about always questioning. Science goes ahead not because we believe everything, it's because we question. We look at it, and when we find something that doesn't measure, we want to look and find out why, because quite often the exception is the rule.
Right. I think you've got a question for me, which I'll remember later. But all this excess energy in our planet. My question is, how do we get rid of that? But I think we might even
I'll talk about that. That's a really good question, and that's exactly what I want to address.
Yeah, good.
How we do it, and it's not that difficult.
Great.
And it can be done very quickly. But what I want to show is this. I think this is a really good graph, and this is done in Earth's energy imbalance, because what we call it is an energy imbalance where more energy is retained than goes back out into space. We're in balance when the same amount comes in as goes out. But throughout history, when we've got ice ages and we've got warm periods, sometimes more has gone out and the planet's frozen. Other times more has come in and we've thawed out, That is the natural state of events. What we can measure now is that at the moment, we are in a period of an imbalance where more energy is coming in, and you can actually measure it in Hiroshimas per second. That's the amount of energy that we're getting in. And you can see that graph. Now, what I want to say too, we haven't got, I'm not here to go into real detail, but the infrared trapped by carbon dioxide is only a small part of it. There's a lot of other parts. Weather is really complex.
Yes.
But the bit of the infrared, the carbon dioxide causing it, we've caused that.
Right.
So we have a responsibility to fix it.
Yep.
There's other things that are out of our control, and that's natural. That's just going to happen whether we like it or not. But we do have control, or should have control, over what we've caused. And what we do know, and there's a lot of debate, and the trouble is weather is the most complex thing, and depending on where you look and what's happening in terms of temperatures and stuff, you can come up with all different figures. But on the whole, in the last 50 years, we've seen a fivefold increase in weather-related disasters. But on the other hand, I just want to say, it depends on where you start. If we go back further to the 1930s, we actually had temperatures just as hot and the same amount. And to go back again to the 1890s, the trouble with a lot of these things is, where do you start?
Yes.
And you can, you come up with very, very different figures. And this is the big problem with all these things, are the boundaries where we do it. So while we can say that in the last 50 years, if we go back in the last 100 years, it actually looks not that much difference. We've actually had high events, for instance, in Australia, we're talking about how hot it is. In 1934, 1939, we had much the same temperatures.
Yes.
So almost
And I think that's where people begin to challenge the scientists and those people making the claims about
Yeah,
climate, is because all they need is just a little bit of conjecture with that sort of data thrown up, and all of a sudden they freeze. They sort of then
yeah,
can't justify their current claims.
exactly. And I
Yep.
think that is a big problem when you get part of the data put through, but they've massaged it
Yep.
to fit what they want. And when you go into it, you can actually say, hang on, this isn't right. We actually, we really don't know. And, I just want to say, how long we've been on this continent for? A bit over 200 years,
Yep.
and we haven't even been taking good weather measurements. We know very, very little.
Yes.
And all around the world, actually, if you want to say, when did we start taking weather measurements and things? So it's very, very recent. And
Yes.
so I just think we have to be very, very careful about making claims over a short period when climate is over thousands of years.
Yeah. Too true.
But yes, I just want to put that there. But I just now want to talk about what we can do to take out the extra energy that's trapped because of what we've done by putting carbon dioxide in the atmosphere. And it's very, very simple. We'll do it the way that nature
Yep.
has done it for the last 4 billion years, called photosynthesis.
Gotcha.
And to explain what that is, we use solar energy. This is the real proper renewable energy, solar energy, not the artificial ones that we cover our landscape with. And we use the most efficient technology that's ever been invented. They're called leads. And they use solar energy and they get carbon dioxide, the main greenhouse gas, and they combine it with water and they make glucose. Glucose is the basic molecule of life. It's the power source for nearly every living organism on this planet, including us.
Yep.
Our cells can burn glucose or products made from glucose. And it's the building block of all our hormones and our proteins, everything else, basic molecule of life. And it's made in glucose. And when we look at a plant, for instance, 95 to 98% of its biomass is made of glucose. Because, for instance, wood, cellulose, is made of long chains of glucose and water. But
Right.
in terms of what we're talking about, the really important thing is when a plant grows, it does photosynthesis, but around 30%, it's about an average of 30%. Some plants it's 40, some it's 10. We say it averages around 30. It sends down from its leaves to its roots. And that goes out and it feeds the soil microbiome, all the microbes in the soil, because they live in the dark. They can't photosynthesize. So they get all their glucose secondhand, or same way we do.
Right.
We can't photosynthesize, so we either get it from eating plants or from animals that ate plants,
Gotcha.
We all depend on plants. But plants actually deliberately feed the soil microbiome. And we call this the liquid carbon pathway or the carbon gift. And the actual technical name for this is the rhizosphere. And this is the area around the tips of roots. What you can see here is all these exudates here of all these glucose compounds coming out of the roots. And that feeds all the microbes in the soil. And that area is actually the area of the highest biodiversity on the planet. 1 teaspoon of this area around the roots contains billions of life form, more organisms than every tree in the Amazon,
So is this what they call mycorrhizal fungi?
Mycorrhizal fungi is just one of them. I'll show you that in the next slide.
Yep,
There's so many, we're just, this big and unpacking it. It's the most massive system, trying to understand it. But it builds soil. So here's our mycorrhizal fungi. So this is the rhizosphere again. This is the root. And what you're seeing here is these fungi. What they do is they go into the root and they get glucose. In exchange for glucose, they'll go out into the soil and use their enzymes to bring in minerals and water to help their host plant. But we've also got all these other ones that build soil. This is where soil is built. If you have a look at these crumb-like structures, we call them PEDs. That is what a good soil is. And that is actually built by the mycorrhizal fungi, but also by azobacterias and a whole range of other soil bacterias and other microorganisms. And they do that by getting the glucose, which is carbon compounds, made from carbon dioxide to carbon, and they build it. So this is an example of what we want to talk about. This is a good soil. It's been built by getting the carbon dioxide out, and see all the roots in there, putting it in there, feeding the soil microbiome. You have a look at that lovely crumb structure. It's soft. The dark color, it's carbon, charcoal.
Right.
It's the black color. This is, I'll just let you know, that's my farm. That's over the fence at my neighbour when he was a cane farmer. And it's got no structure. It's no aeration, hardly any roots, hardly any carbon in it. If water goes in here, it sinks in. Here, because it's so compacted, it runs off. The difference between two soils where we're actually taking the carbon out of the atmosphere and storing it. That's what we're talking about, getting the worst greenhouse gas, supposedly, and we store it in the soil. For us, it's the most important fertilizer because, remember I said before, 98 to 95% of the plant is carbon dioxide and water. It's the most important of all fertilizers. Only 5% of nutrients come from the soil, and that's forgotten. So in our system, what we want to do is get that carbon out of the atmosphere and put it in the soil to build healthy soils. And what I want to show here is where agriculture has got it completely wrong. And they've got the cart before the horse, and that does not work.
Okay.
Everything we talked about is I've got to put all the fertilizers in and feed the soil. That's 5%. 95% of a plant nutrients is made here in the leaves. That's where the glucose is made, and that feeds the roots. Now, if we cut the leaves, what we're seeing is less glucose is going to the roots, and that forces plants to shed their roots because they can't feed it.
Gotcha. Okay.
And the whole secret of what we do is the more leaf area we can have, instead of spraying our farms out and killing it with with herbicides and bare soil, and just having these dead systems. We want the opposite. We want as many leaves in the sun, photosynthesizing, taking out the carbon dioxide, growing roots, and then putting that into the soil. So here, this is my place. I just thought I use, I can give you lots of examples, but I think every now and then it's actually to say, not just, best way to say it, I practice what I preach.
Yep.
I can talk the talk, but I'll walk the walk. And that is, to me, very important. So when I took over my farm, that's what it was like. It was just this subsoil so hard, I used to have to plant with a crowbar.
Right.
And in 11 years, I did this. And I went from less than 1% soil organic matter. Soil organic matter is the area where all the carbon is in the soil, to 6% in 11 years. In that process, because of putting that in, I've increased all the fertility with without having to spend a fortune on fertilizer. The
Yeah.
soil microbiome does that. But why I wanted to show you this picture, this is one of the legumes, deep-rooted legumes I've got, and it's going into the subsoil. And what you can see around here is the rhizosphere. You see the dark areas around it?
Yes.
As it's going deeper, it's putting all that carbon dioxide, or what came from carbon dioxide compound,
Yes.
into the soil. So progressively what I'm doing year after year, all that was carbon dioxide in the atmosphere. It's going deeper and deeper into the soil. And I just want to say, lots of us are doing this. I'm not the only one. There's a lot of us doing it, and a lot of us are. I'll give you some examples of people who actually done it, a lot quicker than I have in 11 years now, with what we know. But I think the really important thing is what we're seeing at the moment in farming is this. All farmers will tell you the seasons have changed; they're disrupted. We can't rely on regular rainfalls. We're getting longer droughts. When the droughts come, it's actually destructive flooding rain. And we have very, very good science showing that increasing soil organic matter, getting all that carbon dioxide out of the atmosphere, putting into our soil as soil organic matter, it increases our resilience in climate extremes. So I just want to give you some of the examples. This is a long-term field trial. This is in Switzerland. And this organic one's been basically supervised by the local organic farmers. Every year, they've been increasing their amounts of soil organic matter. And it's rained at planting, and there's a little bit of damage, not much, but most of that has gone, and that'll go on to be a good crop. This is only a few meters away. This is supervised by the agronomists at the local university using best practice industrial agriculture with all the herbicides and fertilizers and everything.
Yep.
And it's rained, and you can see all that. That's the topsoil washing away. It's destroyed. Actually, the irony is, see this shearing here. If you go in the field and you stick your finger through that, it'll be bone dry underneath. You see it all the time. It just forms like a film. All the water runs off with the topsoil, muddies, pollutes all the rivers. This is a failure. And I just want to unpack that a bit more and explain why. And, just show you this is the difference between, this is another field trial between, it's actually now in Pennsylvania in the USA. And you can see the good soil, it's darker because it's got more carbon. You can see that crumb structure like I showed you in the earlier picture. And then this one, you see all the shearing there. It hasn't got the carbon, it's compacted. Now, when you put that in water, this one, the water's clear. What's happening? The water's soaking in. Leave it there long enough, of course, it's going to collapse. But when you first put it in, it draws in all the water. Here, it immediately collapses. The water becomes muddy. It erodes. It doesn't absorb the water. It falls apart. And that's the difference here. But to unpack it even more, to explain one of the really important components of organic matter, it's called humus. And if you have a look at here under an electron microscope, you can see it's a sponge. It's actually a polymer. It's sticky. And it has the ability to hold up to 30 times its own weight in water. So in the previous pictures, what's happened, instead of the water running away, it's sucked it all up. It's a sponge. It's also a polymer. It's a glue. So instead of collapsing like this, because it's actually not water soluble, this is held together.
Right.
This is the key, is this very important part of organic matter, organic carbon, that when we get the system right, that we increase this. But this, I think, is for Australia, but actually the whole world is very important. This is actually research from Australia. Morris he did this as his master's thesis
Right.
at university. So it's good research. It's what we call a good rule of thumb. The whole issue of how much water can be held by soils because of their percentage of organic matter is actually quite complex. And I'm not going to go into it, but this is a good average, so that near enough is good enough to actually understand.
Yep.
In
Correct.
Australia, most soils and Africa and Asia, and I've looked at so many soil tests, it's between this, this is what I start with.
0.5 and 1%. Yep.
Yeah. When it rains, you can hold 80,000, 160,000 litres in the first 30 centimetres, the first foot. After that, all the rain runs off, floods. Usually runs off with the soil, mud everywhere, wrecks the rivers. You can't absorb anything else. You go up to 6%, and I put 6% there because that's what I did in 11 years. It's not. So what it means, when it rains, you're capturing, a megalitre, 960,000 litres, a million litres is a megalitre, near enough is good enough. And where you're capturing it, right in your root zone. You don't need to have all this big irrigation equipment and spend a fortune on dams and canals and all this other stuff. What are you doing? You're capturing all the water you need. And where have you got it? Under the roots. It's the simplest, most efficient system. And we're keeping it on farm. It's not running off and wrecking our rivers, And this is the result. And this is a very good long-term peer-reviewed study. It's more than 40 years now. And what they found is that with what we call regenerative organic, on average had 31% higher yields than the industrial in droughts. And actually, in the long term, had higher average yields. So this is an example of a drought. As you can see, this is the same soil. It's the same drought, same corn.
Yep.
What is the difference? It's the management. Here they've increased the soil organic matter. So when it's rained, it's captured it, it's stored it. So the droughts come. No one has told this that they're in drought because they've got all the water they need. This is suffering because the rain ran off. They couldn't capture it. And this is the key to building our resilient farming systems. So that's adaptation. Now what I want to talk about is how we essentially turn things around. And the big problem is, for me, and I put it the elephant in the room, is that when we look at the global carbon budget, soils are totally ignored, even though here they've got 1,700 gigatons of carbon in the soils. In the air, we have 885 gigatons. Put things. Coal reserves, 560 gigatons. Oil reserves, 230. Gas reserves, 115. Soils have more carbon than what we have in the atmosphere and all the fossil fuels combined. And yet they're ignored. They're pretending it has what we do with soil has no influence whatsoever on climate change. So all the UN documents, all the things that we're doing, silent on soils. And I've put a lot of time into it to try and get it changed around. There is one UN document called the 4 for 1000. I'm one of the initial signatories in Paris that we got up, but it's still largely ignored by the science community and the climate change community. They're just pretending, it doesn't exist. But I call it the elephant in the room because it is the largest terrestrial source of carbon on the planet.
Right.
And for some reason, it has absolutely no influence. Well, let's unpack that. So the research we've done showing that when we talk about soil organic matter in our farming system, we're losing through ploughing, fertilising, overgrazing, erosion. It actually contributes more than 100 gigatons of our carbon dioxide into the atmosphere.
Wow.
It's not silent. It is the biggest terrestrial source of carbon dioxide. We compare that to fossil fuels and cement, which they say is the biggest source. That's 36 gigatons. Clearing forests are 5 gigatons. So part of the problem why we're getting nowhere is that all the scientists, everything we're doing is ignoring the biggest source. It doesn't matter how much we can stop fossil fuels and cement tomorrow, will have a minor impact on the amount of carbon dioxide if we don't fix up what we're doing to our soil and reverse the loss.
Yep. We had just this discussion this evening at dinner about carbon, about the fact that the younger generation, 25 and unders, are now balking at buying EVs.
Yeah,
because they feel that it's actually doing nothing to the environment because they're looking at the damage being done to make the EVs in the first place.
Yeah,
it's negating.
And
but
I argue the same with solar cells and with wind turbines.
Yeah.
I've got good presentations on that, but we haven't got the time to do that tonight. So I just want to keep on this. But what I want to say here is one of the things that when I started looking at all of the data, and most of the time they quote the carbon dioxide levels at Mauna Leu in Hawaii.
Yes.
And that's where they say, oh, we've got the new record, like May this year. It's always quoting here. Most of the greenhouse gases, of course, are made in the Northern Hemisphere. But by the time they come, they get measured here, but they go down through the Southern Hemisphere where we've got some of the world's major forests and we've got the oceans and or the phytoplankton that photosynthesize. They take it out and we get down to Cape Grim in Tasmania, which is the other, or supposedly the second most important measurement site. We actually find there's a big difference. So these are figures I got from them last year, January, a year ago.
Yep.
So Mauna Leu is 426 parts per million. Cape Grim is 421 parts per million on the same day. And that corresponds to a reduction of 5 parts per million. And if we do the maths on that, that is equivalent of 39 gigatons of carbon dioxide being taken out of the atmosphere through natural processes, the Earth's natural processes, between Mauna Leu and Cape Grim.
Okay.
And just remember that that's more than the total fossil fuel emissions of 36 gigatons. The Earth has these processes of taking it out and keeping the system in balance. It's always been the way. But at the moment, it's out of whack because we're actually putting out more than the Earth can fix up.
Yes.
And the word for that is the emissions gap. So if we look at that, the best way to look at that is in Cape Grim. January 2024 is 417 parts per million. A year later, it's 421. That equates to 3.61 parts per million. So in other words, atmospheric carbon dioxide increased by 28 gigatons. You'll see all these other stuff saying 45, talking about all the emissions. But this is the only real actual physical evidence of measurement
Right.
that in that year, 28 gigatons went up more than the Earth naturally remediate. So we'll
Yes.
call that the emissions gap between what the Earth can fix up and what we're putting out.
Gotcha.
So our goal is to clean up that 28 gigatons.
Correct.
And then we're neutral. Actually, and we can actually, if we do more than that, we go negative. We take it out. We reverse it.
Correct. Okay.
So, we've got all the big corporations, going, oh, we're going to use our carbon removal, and every one of them, including our government, wasted, hundreds of billions.
Yes.
The last one they talked about, this one, Orca in Iceland, and they spent billions on it. It's closed now,
Yep.
So these are their carbon dioxide removal plants. We actually have better technology. It's been proven for the last 4 billion years, never failed. Our carbon dioxide removal plants, we call plants. and they look quite good too. They look a lot less ugly than this,
Yep.
So let's look at things that we can do. So one, when we're looking at what is causing the main causes of the loss of carbon dioxide or soil organic matter, putting
Yep.
up. And the biggest one in agriculture actually isn't ploughing, it's nitrogen fertilizers. And this is these are very good studies. I've just put 2 of them there, but there's actually more scientific studies I can cite. But what they looked at is a long-term trial in Illinois, and they go back before fertilizers were used, so they can find fields that never had fertilizers, and those where they started putting on nitrogenous fertilizer.
Yep.
And what they found is where synthetic nitrogen fertilizer is used, they lost around 36,700 kilograms of carbon dioxide per hectare per year, on top of all the other biomass of the crops. That's just what they lost out of the soil. So if you do a basic back of the envelope, bit of mass on, say, 90% of croplands around the world, that's 51 gigatons alone caused by using these fertilizers. Now, if we change to organic and regenerative systems, and I showed you the earlier work, we're actually getting higher yields with our best practice. We don't need these fertilizers. That alone closes the emissions gap. Suddenly, we go negative just by doing that. But we've got heaps of them. The most degraded areas are our rangelands through bad grazing. All the deserts of Arabia and North Africa and all those areas, are caused by overgrazing. They were the food bowls of Egypt and the Roman Empire, and they turned them into deserts through overgrazing. But there's 3.4 billion hectares of rangelands and permanent pastures, and that's 68% of agricultural lands. And they're not suitable for ploughing. They're very fragile.
Right.
Once they were very carbon rich, where we can find remnant areas, we can actually find good example of 3 to 16% soil organic matter. Most have less than 1%. Now,
so you're saying here, Andre, that 68% of the world's agricultural lands are now degraded beyond use.
Well, I won't say beyond use, but that they are highly degraded. They and they can only really be used for grazing. They're not suitable for cropping.
Gotcha.
But some of them are okay, but the bulk of them are amongst the most degraded, and that's what I show you. I don't know if you fly to when you fly to London, you look out and you fly over the Middle East.
Yep.
And just remember that once upon a time, there were a few thousand years ago, that was the Garden of Eden.
Mm.
That was the Fertile Crescent. That's where all these civilizations started.
Yep.
And they've turned those areas into desert through inappropriate agriculture. And grazing has been the main one. But
Right.
we can turn it around really simply, and what we call regenerative or holistic grazing. So,
Yep.
there's an example of Texas, and the bare soil, carbon dioxide goes up. There's no organic matter that's hardened. The rain goes on, it just runs off. It can't go in. You turn it around, the water goes in. The plants take the carbon dioxide. This is actually one of my favorites. This is the Karoo in South Africa. It's an arid system. It's actually a very biodiverse one. And what happened here is that because it's being degraded by inappropriate docking, but in all of these rangelands, they've always had animals grazing them. And all these plants need grazing because what happens, see where it's all dry there?
Yep.
When in the dry season it goes like that, that shades the growing tip. Remember, we're talking about plants use carbon dioxide and water, but they need sunlight.
Yes.
Without sunlight, they can't photosynthesize.
Correct.
That now stops photosynthesis. Now, what needs to happen here is that gets grazed off and lets the sunlight into the tips and it grows off.
Right. Yes.
Instead, what the land manager said, oh no, the animals are the problem, so they've destocked it. So what's happened? All these plants have died. They're no longer getting sunlight. They've died.
And this is where rotational grazing is coming in. Yes. Yeah. Right. Yeah. Gotcha.
Timing, doing it right. So here in Africa, grazing. In Australia, that was actually done by cool burns at the right time.
Right.
To do exactly the same thing. There's, how can I say, with all these things, there's not one size fits all, and you've got to have the appropriate methods.
So if we go back to then Indigenous land management.
Yeah.
So what you're saying is that they would do cool burnings because they didn't have hundreds of thousands of head of cattle.
Yeah.
They would do cool burnings at night, which would burn off the tip, and then the sun would come out the next day and there'd be fresh plant growth reaching up to the sun to get energy. Okay.
Yeah, exactly. And it'd be green. And that would actually, that's how they actually did rotational grazing. They rotated their kangaroos and emus by just burning at different times. Yes. And the animals would come to the green pit. But the other thing, what it meant, because I'm actually writing a book on it, and I think it's very relevant to what we're seeing now. You go in the middle, you read people like Sturt and Mitchell, the first European explorers. They're in the middle of a horrific drought, as hot as it is now, and they're talking about these beautiful green pastures. And because if you burn at the right time, instead of having all this dry grass, flammable grass that we have now, you've actually got pasture that's no longer flammable in the middle of summer. They never had. I've gone through all the diaries I can find, and I can find no evidence of a catastrophic fire like we have now.
Right.
They drove through these cool burns with Aboriginal people. They rode through in their horses, Yep. At most, they had to gallop sometimes just to, if there's a bit of grass going a bit fast, but...
Sure.
They just described just going through with their expeditions as burning all around them, it wasn't dangerous. Probably the worst thing was having to breathe in the smoke.
Right. Okay.
Yeah. So, yeah, exactly. So what I'm trying to say, we actually have a lot of solutions. It's not one size fits all.
Yeah.
Ways we can do it. I just want to show you this. This is one of my favorites. This is actually Alan Savory's place.
Yes. He's a legend, isn't he?
He certainly is a legend. It's actually, his book is coming out this year. It's called Unsavory, and it's a great read.
I'm sure it will be. Yep.
Anyway, when he took it over, that's what it looked like: 200 cattle, and doing damage. And of course, everybody said, "Oh, 200 cattle's doing damage, so you can de-stock it." He realised, no, it's how we manage them. And you can see in 3 years the difference.
Yeah.
I'll just show you this picture and then I'll go back.
Yeah.
I took this actually I took this 3 years ago this month.
Right.
At his place. And sorry, the 100 cattle was doing damage.
Yeah. Yep.
And when I took this, he actually had 400 cattle. What you can see now is this mosaic of all these different grasses, all these different sorts of woodlands. When I spoke with him, he said, now he's got so much grass, he needs 1,000 cattle, because in the dry season there, when it dries off, it's got to be eaten off, otherwise the grass dies.
Yes.
So to keep this healthy, he goes from 100 doing damage to 1,000. Plus, he's got all these other wildlife. That is actually a hide. It's got a herd of elephants there, and it's got, so. And what I like about this is an example of, it's not either or zero sum. It's got 1,000 cattle. Plus, he's regenerated all the biodiversity on the farm. Things like creeks and things that are dried up. You go to his place and it's a nice flowing creek full of lovely water lilies. Go to the next door neighbours and it's this muddy little fast flow, nothing happening, But what I want to show here is, when we talk about this system, now we'll go from some of the good science that by changing grazing, it's not only do we stop the loss of the soil and carbon dioxide going up into the atmosphere, what we can do is increase our soil organic matter. And I've just, without reading it all out, the main thing I just want to show is that he showed here that you can remove 11 tonnes of carbon dioxide per hectare per year with these systems, and this is very good science that he's done.
And continuing to run cattle, and continuing to run other, ruminant animals.
Yeah, exactly. And showing that, the cattle aren't the problem; it's the management. As people say, it's not the cow, it's the how.
Yeah. Yep.
And we do have the how. That's what I want to say. We have good science, and I just want to show you this as an example. For me, a picture's worth 1,000 words. That I like the ground truth. I'm a scientist, but naturally I read scientific papers, and I know Richard Teague very well. I regard him as a friend and a very good scientist. And this is good work.
Yep.
But this, to me, says everything.
Correct.
Now let's go to Australia. This is Gippsland, and the only Australian farmer who's consistently been paid under our government climate change scheme for taking carbon dioxide out of the air and putting it into soil, Niels Olsen. And this is strip tilling in annual pastures. Instead of ploughing out the pasture, he just he grazes it down very short, and then this actually just goes through, just sort of digs it up, aerates it, grows the soil, and he plants, this is air seeders in here, and he plants what we call a cow salad. A wonderful biodiversity of winter-grown crops, because this is, in a Mediterranean climate, in winter you get most of the rain. Most of the farmers in the area, it's winter, they're struggling for pasture. Here it's pasture in abundance. And so he's more than doubled his stock carrying capacity. But what I want to say, he's paid initially 11.2 and then later 13 metric tonnes per
hectare per
carbon
year.
dioxide per hectare per year by the Australian government. I know now that he's been, over the last 10 years, he's been averaging more than 10 tonnes a hectare with this system.
Wow.
So what I did is, we extrapolated this across global farmland doing this. That's 63 gigatons. Remember, our goal is 28?
Yes.
We don't have to get every farmer. We get a
No.
third, or half the world's farmers doing something as simple as this. We're negative.
Yeah.
And this is the last one I want to end on. And this one I really like. This has been, California, just north of San Francisco. Originally, they had 40 acres. Well, they still have 40 acres, but they went down to 3 acres. And, this is, the numbers come from Chico State University. They started with 2.4% organic matter, and in 6 years they went between 7 and 8%. Remember, I went from 1 to 6 and 11 years. I'm just trying to say there's people who can do much better than me. And what I love about this too is that they earn around $200,000 per acre. They employ 8 people.
Wow.
And why I think this is important, because a lot of people say, smallholder farmers, you've got to go, you've got to get big or you get out.
Yes.
They did the opposite. They went small and intensive. And this is really important because most of the world's 3 billion farmers have 2 hectares or less, actually, 5 acres. Or less.
Yeah, correct.
And so this is less than 5 acres and highly profitable. But in terms of climate change, when I extrapolated this, that's 179 gigatons. We start scaling this up with the world's smallest farmers. We get them out of poverty.
Yeah.
And we solve the problem. This is win-win. It's not rocket science. We don't have to invent anything. Everything I've shown you today has been done. We just need to stop wasting the billions on flying all these useless people to these meetings. Just the jet fuel money wasted. If we got that, we'd solve it tomorrow.
So how can we persuade these, a lot of these farmers, for example, Africa, India, subcontinent, etc. What's the easiest way we could get them? I mean, EcoForce, we're all about planting trees. We're all about land repair, land regeneration. So this is our meat and potatoes. What do we have to do to get these farmers on board, to get them to understand the value of this? Is it simply showing them the numbers? Is it educating them?
Getting them markets.
Right. Markets for their finished product.
At the end of the day, they need income. And what, you mentioned before, I was the president of iFarm Organics International now.
Yep.
We work with farmers all around the world with these systems. And the key always is, first things first, because we're talking about the most food insecure people on the planet. Mm-hmm. The first market is the kitchen table.
Right.
Plant a kitchen garden. Feed your kids first.
Okay.
Work out.
Yep.
From there. And from there, what we did is got them good local markets. And also we ended up getting them export markets, say things like pineapples into Europe, coffee to the United States, where to bring it in and get them a income. Other things we did, part of it too, is not just the field, but as a landscape. For instance, I haven't shown you what we did in Tigray, with the Tigray project. that was in Ethiopia, and that's where Live Aid was, and all the thousands of people, hundreds of thousands of people
Yes.
of hunger. Now, part of what we did was help them modify their grazing because all their hills were bare.
Right.
And,
Yep.
we didn't stop them from grazing, they needed it, but we turned it around and got them to revegetate their hills.
Great.
Now, by doing that, they could now sustainably harvest that as biomass to make compost, as fertilizer for their fields. They could put hives in there and get honey as another income. In fact, actually, what happened in these villages, the young men came back. They migrated out of the village out of poverty to Addis Ababa, and people, lived on the fringes of poverty. They could now go back and run little businesses running hives because you had all the flowering trees. Because we revegetated the hills, the creeks and rivers started flowing again. We changed, they got more rainfall and so on. Just talking about doing it at landscape value and the multiple benefits we got.
Yes.
And we took people who were dying from abject poverty into well-being, by doing it. And it doesn't cost a lot of money,
No. That's wonderful. Wow. It just proves, and this really is the most relevant and simple solution that we can actually do.
Yeah.
If we bring it down to non-agricultural consumers, so what can consumers who live in our metropolitan cities do to be part of this solution? Is it adopting a farm? Is it adopting or supporting agriculture, through programs like yours or ours, where we plant trees and pay farmers to keep the trees alive, etc., etc.
Yeah.
What's a way that the average Joe Blow can actually do or contribute to this, do you think?
Okay, well, one of them, like what you're doing, and at the moment, can I say where I am, where the cane, our cane industry is closed down, but the only industry now that our farmers have got is replanting trees.
Right.
And they don't need to be mutually exclusive.
No.
And doing it. So there's ways we can work around it. Part of the systems that we're promoting is what we call agroforestry.
Yep.
And where we can do both silver pasture, instead of having these putting trees in it. And some of those trees can be fodder trees, forage trees. There's a whole range of ways we can do it. It's not one size fits all because we have so many different ecosystems and needs. But I'd say the easiest thing is to be an aware consumer and start looking for, basically organic is probably the easiest at the moment because we have good evidence that organic products do sequester carbon dioxide and put it into the soil. They're good regenerative systems as well. For instance, if you're buying beef, you buy grass-fed.
Yes.
Rather than feedlot. Feedlots, all the methane goes up in the atmosphere. Grass-fed, as I've shown you, it goes into the soil, and the best grass-fed systems are regenerating the whole of the ecosystem, So just simple choices like that. When you buy eggs, you don't buy,
caged eggs, you buy free-range eggs.
You get free-range out on just all of those are beneficial for the environment, and they're really simple choices. And by doing that, you actually force farmers to change. And we're rewarding the farmers who are doing the right thing, And the side effect is we end up being healthier because we're eating healthier food without all the pesticides and junk in it.
Yes. So is this your last slide?
Yeah, I've finished. So apart from this,
Yeah,
This
absolutely.
is the last book I did with the late Ronnie Cummings, and where we actually go into detail about all the different systems. We give lots of examples about
So where can people buy this book from?
just online. Amazon will have it.
Okay,
Any online bookshop will have it. It's
gotcha.
through Chelsea Green, but just go online, you'll get it.
Yeah. One of the things we haven't spoken about tonight is methane.
Yeah.
And there's conversations around the levels of methane in our atmosphere. Again, it could be the same sort of story around CO2 emissions and supposedly that methane's causing an issue for our atmosphere. We can't capture methane, or can we?
Yeah, we can. We can biodegrade it.
Right.
Look, if you just remember that historically, when we look at the great savannas of Africa, the prairies of the USA with all the billions of buffaloes, the steppes of Asia with all the horses, and the pampas, and actually Australia, across all the kangaroos and everything we had. When we look back for millions of years, methane was mostly stable. Every now and then you can see a bump.
Right.
Because we have a methane cycle. The methane goes up, but when it's on pasture, it's a couple of things. Methane only lasts 12 years,
Right.
and it breaks down to carbon dioxide. So that gets absorbed by the grass. But within healthy pasture, we have what's called mesanthropic bacteria. They actually use methane as their energy source instead of glucose.
Uh-huh.
And they eat methane. And so in a healthy ecosystem, whatever methane has been put out by animals
Yes.
gets biodegraded. It really is a nonsense. Fossil fuels are new carbon dioxide.
Right.
Coming out of soil. Methane is existing carbon dioxide, the same being cycled, it's always been cycled. Now, the problem is that now we've gone into factory farming.
Yes.
Those systems no longer break down the methane.
Right.
They are the ones that 100% goes up. And all the modelling is done on the factory farms and not done on the farms on pasture, which happens to be most of Australia's farms.
Right.
And so...
so once again, we're cherry picking the data to suit the story.
It's worse than cherry picking. It's actually fundamental scientific fraud.
Right, yeah.
Because you're actually ignoring the largest part of production and focusing on a small part and extrapolating that for all and making rules to ban. Now, which is completely wrong. And, those scientists and people who are pushing that, people like Bill Gates, are fraudulent, as far as I'm concerned. They should not. Yeah, thanks.
Yeah, that's all right.
Yeah, I should have done that. I should have stopped sharing.
It's all
They should not be, pushing these very narrow views, and they should be looking at the whole story. Yeah. And the fact, I just showed you the studies by Richard Teague, but there's a whole lot of others that have come out now showing that grass-fed, extensive grazing sequesters more greenhouse gases than they emit. Right. Scaling up grass-fed and extensive systems like most of Australia's grazing is the solution.
So do Australian farmers need to plant more trees? Do they need to stop ploughing their paddocks? Do they need to...
Yeah, look, there's a... Well, one is I've got to stop putting nitrogen fertilisers on.
Yep.
If they want to get nitrogen, get it for free. We've got, how can I say, about 680 acacia species. They all fix nitrogen. And I can talk about all the other nitrogen fixing native species. And it doesn't matter where you are in Australia, we can get endemic species that we can put into our pasture that will give them all the nitrogen. And a lot of them also become, in the dry season, really good forage
Yeah.
as well, and just silver pasture, The other thing is where it's really important, it breaks my heart when I just see these endless fields with no shade for animals. You think about this time of year and they're out in 40 degrees.
Yes.
That's animal cruelty. Whereas if they've got a nice grove of trees, you'll see they'll all be in there, they'll be lying down, you make sure there's water there, we do humane systems. It's just better for the animals, better for the environment.
Yeah, absolutely.
And so the answer is yes. The other thing I didn't actually, normally in my presentation, the other point I'll actually talk about is how to cool it down, and showing, while there's no evidence that reducing carbon dioxide will either cool it down or heat it up, planting trees does. And the best example of that is one study in the United States that looked at that the east coast of the United States now is 1.5 degrees Celsius cooler than it was 100 years ago. Because see, when the first colonists came there, they chopped all the trees down, to make the farms.
Yes.
And then they moved out to the Midwest, and started farming at a bigger scale. And eventually all the little farms on the East Coast became unproductive and trees grew back. And so you've got this thing, whilst, we're talking about the world being 1.5 degrees hotter than it was 100 years ago. These parts of the US are 1.5 degrees cooler than they were, simply because of the trees. We have similar ones in the Amazon and in Sumatra and other areas where we can show that the quickest way to take down this 1.5 degrees increase is planting trees, shading, and the fact that trees work like air conditioners with their transpiration. One tree is equivalent to something like 4 air conditioners in the way it cools the environment.
It's pretty amazing, isn't it? Nature has its way, doesn't it?
Yeah.
Yeah.
For me, trees are the most amazing bit of technology. You talk about all the carbon dioxide removal plants that the government spends billions on it. What I like about trees is that our carbon dioxide removal plant builds itself.
Yeah. No,
and it's better as the years go by.
Yeah, it's a very challenging belief pattern for people that I think we touched on this before we sort of joined each other tonight, but we have been spun this message that there are no real solutions except technological solutions to the climatic issues that our planet faces. And someone 4 or 5 years ago said to me, listen, if you took every human off the planet would be fine because it knows how to regenerate itself, it knows how to repair itself, and it knows how to rebalance itself. So we're the temporary citizens. We need to take far more care of it than we are if we want to, elongate our life.
Exactly.
Yeah.
I couldn't agree more with you. And the thing is, I think what I tried to go through today, it's not difficult. It's not rocket science. We don't, honestly, we don't need to spend any more money inventing anything. We just need to put the money into scaling up what we know already works. Maybe put a little bit more money in to make what already works work better, but don't let that stop us. Just go ahead with, what I showed you tonight. But I could actually, gone on for hours with showing you so many more. We have so many solutions, and so many people are doing so many wonderful things. And yet it's the world's best kept secret.
Well, maybe we should meet again and we should get some of those people to come and join us and we could have a round table evening where we could see some of the other great work that's been done around the world. But Andre, thank you for spending tonight with me. Every time I talk to people like yourself, I learn so much. And I can assure you that we'll take tonight's video, and we'll share it far and wide, and hopefully educate more people about the value of what you're doing and what we're doing, and how we can actually repair our planet relatively inexpensively, and we can control it ourselves instead of having to wonder about the tech to do the job for us.
Yeah, thanks. And I'll be very happy to
Excellent.
talk again in the future. So, and look, thank you for what you're doing. We need every one of us out there doing our little bit. And in the end, we will make a difference.
We will indeed. Andre, excellent. Thank you and good evening.
You too. Ciao.